Mention the name Suzuki Hayabusa and even non-motorcycle people know what you're talking about. The model first appeared in 1999, instantly taking the title of the world's fastest production motorcycle away from arch rivals Honda and Kawasaki. In the 22 years since that spectacular debut, the Hayabusa has gone on to become an iconic bike of speed and excess. Surprisingly, it's only been updated once in that time, and that was back in 2008. That is, until now. Retailing at $18,599 MSRP here in the United States, the legend is reborn for 2022. Under the skin sits a revised version of the 1340cc inline 4-cylinder motor, producing 187 horsepower at 9,750 RPM. Torque is now a claimed 110 pounds-feet of torque at 7,000 RPM. Interestingly, that's less than the most recent predecessor, which produced 194 horsepower and 114 pounds-feet of torque. But the previous generation didn't have to contend with the myriad emissions hoops the 22 Busa does. So for Suzuki to get even close to that and still pass the Euro 5 regulations is commendable. And hey, 187 horsepower is still pretty impressive. Certain numbers have increased though, namely weight. The Hayabusa is now up a touch from a claimed 582 pounds to 586 pounds, and that's with a full tank of gas. And that's despite the fact that Suzuki has gone through the motor from top to bottom, shaving weight off practically every nut, bolt, valve, spring, conrod and the crankshaft where possible. Every major part of the motor is either revised or renewed, with Suzuki touting the motor as a far sturdier unit than in the past. As for the chassis, there's a more relaxed steering head angle, which improves high-speed stability for the twin-spar aluminum frame. There's also new Brembo Stylema brake calipers in the same vein as the Ducati Panigale V4S, and there's new fully adjustable KYB suspension. Where the latest Hayabusa is vastly different from the previous is in electronics. As such, Suzuki has finally graced the Hayabusa with an inertial measurement unit, one that works in conjunction with the Suzuki Intelligent Ride System, which is their collection of electronic aids. The suite of assists includes 10-stage traction control, 10-stage wheelie control, 6 different power modes, 3 preset and 3 customizable, a 2-stage up and down quick shifter, 3-stage engine brake control, 3-stage launch control, cornering ABS, cruise control, an active speed limiter, hill hold control, and even slope descent control, which prevents the rear wheel from lifting under heavy braking when going down hills. And the purists will love the dash, which still features the 2 classic analog dials for speed and RPM, with the digital LCD TFT screen in the middle to house mission control. We were offered one of 4 highly sought after places at a special pre-launch event held by Suzuki America to see if the new bike fits the Hayabusa legend.
Yay! Brand new Busa. In front of me is Garrett Kai from Suzuki. Yay! Alright, here we go. Woo, look at that. I love how they've got those clocks, those old school analog clocks. Yeah, I still feel, I've got to be honest, ladies and gents, it's been a long time since I've ridden a Busa. Stick first gear and barely even registered. Still feels like what I remember it. It's so low, these things. You're sort of used to these days with sports bikes being short and tall, like short front to back and tall top to bottom. This is very much still the grand sport touring sport bike style of long and low. I mean, I must say it's very comfortable. It's certainly not cramped at all. I always find sports bikes, unless I'm racing them or riding them on track, they're not the most comfortable things. But the Busa, it's just everything's a bit more stretched out. Alright, so we just managed to get the Hayabusa up to Mulholland Drive, go for a bit of a cruise. We're still in B mode at the moment, so I'm just trying to get used to how the throttle works in B mode. Currently power 2, traction control level 5, lift control level 5, engine braking off, and quick shifter on 1. Come on, bud. Thank you. Alright. I gotta say, far out, that quick shifter is sublime. That is beautiful. It is very smooth, this. Like, it's long and low, so it rides over bumps beautifully, and it does steer quite well, like quite quickly for such a long bike. That's always been a trait of the Hayabusas anyway. I am very pleased to see that this thing comes with S22 Bridgestones. Those are one of the best sport touring tyres on the market. Fabulous tyre, and the bike feels wonderful on these things right now. It's such a funny feeling to be riding a Busa again. It's been so long. And I'm also going to be very careful not to completely obliterate my license when I'm riding this thing, so you have to forgive me if you're hoping I was going to ride the absolute nuts off the thing like I'm on a racetrack, but I am on a public road, so I've got to be a little bit careful here, especially when I'm going through residential areas like this. There's a really nice brake feel. Yeah, it's actually a pretty old school master cylinder as well on this thing, on the Hayabusa. It's not a brand new looking master cylinder. Hydraulic clutch as well, so they've sort of kept with tradition a fair bit with this bike. Right, now interestingly, the Hayabusa does not come with with a cyclist. Hayabusa is not coming with electronically adjustable suspension, which is kind of strange when you consider how they're aiming this as the super premium model. Although having said that, you know, the suspension that's on there at the moment, it does do the job pretty well. I've always said that, like, look, better really nicely set up conventional suspension generally tops electronic suspension, but given the industry's preference these days for making absolutely everything electronic, it is interesting that Suzuki has decided to stay analog with the suspension, which, to be honest, is probably to the betterment of the machine. I'm rolling around in B mode. Once I get through this, I'm not a massive fan of the lag in B mode on the throttle. Let's slow down a bit, get her in A mode. Okay, that, and no, not C mode, A mode. Alright, there we go. Oh, that's better. Yeah. That throttle feels a little bit more direct. Oh God, I wish I had this thing at an airstrip. An airstrip or a drag strip or something. And this thing is a raging bull that has not been kicked in the nuts. It needs to be kicked in the nuts, ripped down the drag strip. Let's go. Oh! Yeah. There's very few things in the world that accelerate like a Hayabusa. Man, this thing just feels like a caged animal here. It is certainly not this is not the area that we need to be going if we're going to get the most out of this bike. I took the wheelie control off at that last stop. It's not making a difference at the moment because I'm not trying to do wheelies, but it certainly does come up when you want it to. Funny, with the Busa, the faster you go, the better it feels. Man, it's so stable. That was always such a there we go. It was always such a feeling of the Hayabusa range, long and low, and it just loves long sweeping corners. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going, so I'm just going to be a bit careful. Oof. Easy now, come on. And you can just feel the punchiness of that engine. We're only rolling in second gear, so we're right in the meat of the power. I've turned the power up to third gear, I beg your pardon. I've turned the power up to A mode, much more direct, gives you everything that you ask for. There's just so much grunt underneath you. You can feel that motor. It just wants to go and go, and like the canyons around Malibu are certainly not the ideal place to be warping out a Hayabusa, that's for sure. But it's still such good fun. Throttle response is like immediate as well. But it's a really lovely thing. It steers beautifully. It's not the fastest steering motorcycle out there, that's for sure. Look at that, isn't that stunning? Yeah, it's not the fastest steering bike out there, but it's so stable that it makes up for it. Interestingly, this bike doesn't come with self-cancelling indicators. I would have thought that would have been the case. Give it a wind out. Oh. God damn, this thing picks up speed so quick. Oh boy. Such a sweet thing. It's sweet, like it's a sweet bike, but it still feels a little old, I've got to say. It doesn't have this, I don't know. I'm trying to make my mind up about it. Like it doesn't feel like it has the sportiness maybe that the old one did. You know, back in the day when the Hayabusa first came out, right? You had GSXR 1000s that were, well, GSXR 1000 wasn't even there yet. That was 2001 that came out, I think, or 2000, one or two. So look, the Hayabusa felt almost more sporty. Now sports bikes nowadays are so good at what they do, but this is more of a, it's kind of hard to figure out who's going to buy this bike. It's an outstanding motorcycle. Like, it is beautiful in how it's made and how it goes. It just does everything so well. But my question is this bike for today's riders? Where we've got to try and figure out is where this places in the current market in modern motorcycling terms, because everything's about smaller, lighter, faster in sports biking. This is a sports bike from a previous era, shall we say. You could almost equate this to something like an AMG Mercedes. You know, very, very, very fast, but well appointed and comfortable. You got to take out the mindset with the GSXR versus this thing. A GSXR will a Suzuki GSXR 1000R, which is about 800 bucks cheaper than something like this, will run rings around a Hayabusa. So you got to take the mindset out of that, and I have to as well, because it's kind of hard to not compare the two. But on the ride set, the ride itself is very good. It's a thoroughly enjoyable bike to ride. That 1340cc motor is a monster. Like, it always was, it's still a monster. What Suzuki's done is managed to get this thing through emissions testing without feeling like it's got through emissions testing. Now, that's no mean feat. Now, if you've seen some of the videos that we've done recently, you'll know that we've sort of harped on a bit about that emissions block. The Honda CBR 1000RR has it bad. The Aprilia Tuono 660 has it. They've all got these things that, unfortunately, they have to punch through to get through the emissions problems or emissions laws. This thing has done it, and it doesn't even feel like it. And that's what capacity does for you. And man, does this thing come on! Like, second, third, and fourth gear, it's real quick. It's super fast, very long and low. So when you do bury that throttle in, man, it just hooks in and bang, it goes. It's really, really good fun. It's matched to a fantastic gearbox. Now, the old cliche of motorcycle journalism was that Suzuki builds great gearboxes. The cliches often exist for a reason, and this is no exception. This thing it makes it fun to shift gears. You know, it's just ding, ding, ding. One of the things I really like about the Busa, and always have, is the old school analog dashes. Now, I'm so used these days, and I think we all are, we're so used to having digital dashes. There's something really romantic about seeing those revs rise at the same speed as the speedo. Like, it's pretty cool. Definitely takes you back to bikes, or at least it does for me. It takes us back to bikes that I grew up on. I remember the first time I ever rode a Hayabusa. I used to work in a Suzuki dealership when I was 16. I rode one, which was highly, highly illegal at that stage. So the salesman let me go for a ride on it. And I remember just winding that thing out and seeing those dials come up and down, and it's pretty cool. The dials are about the only analog thing when it comes to electronics in this bike now. The Suzuki's new electronic suite is very, very good. It's not this sort of game-changing suite of electronics. It's basically what most superbikes have got nowadays. You've got 6 different modes, 3 programmable and 3 preset. You can switch your wheelie control all the way off, which I love, because this thing does awesome wheelies. So you can switch all that stuff off. You got different power modes. You've got like 9 or 10 stage traction control. So there is a lot of adjustability within those electronics, which is needed nowadays to get through all the different laws and all that kind of stuff. And things like in Europe, you can't switch ABS off, things like that. Cruise control comes as standard. Hallelujah, because a bike like this, if you're going to be using it to charge big miles, you're definitely going to want cruise control, and it comes with that as standard. Interestingly, Suzuki has not gone for electronically adjustable suspension. Good stuff, because they've got really good KYB suspension that's very nicely sorted. I've always thought that good, well set up conventional suspension generally trumps electronic suspension, and this thing is very, very good. It's very plush ride while still maintains that sporty feeling that we want. It's matched to Bridgestone S22s. Now, there's the link up there if you want to check out the review of the S22. I love that tyre. It's one of the best sport touring tyres you can get. So the fact that this comes standard with that is a real win for Suzuki. Little things like that make a big difference. Especially when you're going through long sweeping corners, and that's where this bike shines. It's too long and low and, let's face it, too heavy to really get after it in the real twisty stuff. Where this thing shines is long sweepers where you can really dial that power in. And when you've got good suspension, really good tyres, a really stable long and low chassis matched to this beast of an engine, it's good fun times. It really is, particularly when you start dialing the electronics back and you can feel the back end moving and things like that. I love the way that they've modernized the look of the bike, like your air fins down here. I love the look at the seat up here, and how the original seat, if you go back way back into the mid 90s, late 90s, when the original Hayabusa came out, that seat was drawn off the Suzuki RGV 500, 1998 RGV 500 to be precise. So yeah, you could still see those genes in that link, and just the way that everything sort of flows in nicely, things like that. It's really cool. One of the things I'm not a fan of is that it doesn't come with steel brake lines. I would have thought a bike of this sort of prestige would come with steel brake lines. GSX-R1000 is, as I say, $800 less. It does come with steel brake lines. And also there's no self-cancelling indicators, which that's a bit annoying. I would have thought for the premium sports bike, there's a lot of bikes that are lower in spec and lower in price and lower in prestige than the Hayabusa that do come with that sort of stuff. So would have liked that. So this brings me to my final point. Who's going to buy the Hayabusa? It is a tough one, honestly, because the Hayabusa is a bike from a bygone era, really. It's only had 1 model update in its life, 2 now. So there's a whole generation of sports bike riders out there that didn't grow up with the Hayabusa as at the forefront of power and speed and things like that. There are a huge amount of people out there. There is a huge amount of people out there that subscribe to the church of the Hayabusa, as it were. Pure speed, drag racing, all that kind of stuff. And those guys are going to eat this thing up, and rightly so. It's a fantastic motorcycle. You have to look at it as a really, really sporty sports tourer. Depending on how that is interpreted by today's riders is kind of a very individual choice. It doesn't do anything better than a GSX-R1000, which is the sports bike, superbike of choice from Suzuki. But I think to look at it in that light isn't very fair on the Busa. This is, stately sports touring, whatever you want to call it, something like that. It's a really, really special bike. It's an incredibly important bike to Suzuki as well. I personally, if it's just me, I would have liked to have seen Suzuki use the Hayabusa name as a platform for really new technology, to really push something through. I know that when they were developing this bike, they were trying to, they basically just wanted to build a better version of what they had, and you can't blame them for that. They had a really good formula. That's why it only ever got 1 update before, so it's hard to blame them, especially at a corporate level, why they would change it. However, I would have liked to have seen something as a name as important as Hayabusa is to a company like Suzuki, that they might start looking at alternative power methods, like just different styles really. That hasn't happened, but it doesn't really matter. It's still a fantastic bike. It's going to appeal to a certain set of riders, and if that's you, all power to you. But yeah, it's a great bike. It's great to see the Hayabusa name back in action.